Ever heard of rain that wasn't exactly water?
Oh, I think I know where this is going.
Back in the summer of '94, the people in Oakville, Washington got something a lot weirder.
Yeah, the Oakville blogs. It's a pretty wild story.
Instead of, refreshing rain, they got this thick, gooey substance.
I've heard about this. Is it true they had no idea what it was?
Well, that's what we're going to deep dive into today,
Yeah,
Rosie.
absolutely. We'll dig into firsthand stories, look at the different theories, and maybe uncover some hidden connections.
Imagine waking up and finding your town covered in this jelly-like goo.
Not exactly a pleasant morning surprise.
And it happened 6 times over 3 weeks in August 1994.
6 times. Wow. Oakville is a small, quiet town, right?
Yeah, pretty rural. But there's something interesting. It's close to several military bases.
Okay, now that's a detail that could be important.
Right. Let's start with those first-hand accounts. One comes from David Lacey, a police officer who witnessed one of the blob storms.
What did he say?
He said they were clear, gelatinous, kind of like Jell-O.
Jello falling from the sky. That's just bizarre.
Totally. They stuck to everything, cars, trees, you name it.
I bet people were freaking out.
Oh, absolutely. And he said they smeared when you tried to wipe them off. Not like normal rain at all.
And what about the residents? Did any of them see this happen?
Yeah, there's Doi Hearn. She found the blobs all over her property.
What did she think it was?
At first she thought it was hail.
Hail. But it wasn't frozen.
Nope. Soft and gooey. Nobody had ever seen anything like it.
So you have this strange substance falling from the sky, and then
People start getting sick.
this is where things get really interesting.
A lot of the residents in Oakville, even Officer Lacey and Doi Hearn, came down with a really bad flu-like illness.
Sounds pretty serious.
It was. They had trouble breathing, dizziness, blurred vision, vomiting.
That's way worse than a normal flu.
Yeah, and it lasted for weeks. For some people, it took months to recover.
So the timing makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Exactly. Could the blobs have been making people sick? That's the big question.
Were the blob storms just some weird natural thing, or was it something more?
Let's look at some of the theories. One of the first ones was airplane waste.
Airplane waste. Ew.
I know, right?
Hmm.
But they found bacteria in the blobs that's usually found in, the human digestive tract.
Okay, and it did fall from the sky. I guess it makes sense that people would think of that.
But there are some problems with that theory.
Like what?
For one, the FAA makes airplanes dye their waste blue.
Oh, right, to make sure it's not mistaken for anything else.
Exactly. And the Oakville blobs were clear.
Okay, that makes sense. Anything else?
It happened 6 times in 3 weeks. That's a lot of airplanes dumping waste over the same town.
Yeah, that does seem a little too coincidental.
So probably wasn't airplanes. Another theory was that it was jellyfish.
Jellyfish? How could that be?
Some people thought maybe an Air Force bombing run nearby could have shattered a bunch of jellyfish.
And then those bits got picked up by the storm clouds and rained down on Oakville.
That's the idea.
It's an interesting theory, but wouldn't jellyfish smell?
You're right. Decomposing jellyfish would stink. But the Oakville blobs had no odor at all.
Huh. Good point. Plus, jellyfish raining down for 3 weeks straight? That seems pretty unlikely.
So we could probably rule out those two.
Yeah.
But something caused those blob storms, right?
Of course. And the sources mentioned another theory, one that's a little unsettling, a biological weapons test?
Yeah, that one really gets people thinking.
For sure. And there are a few things that make this theory stand out.
Like what?
Well, right before the blob started falling, people reported seeing black helicopters in the area.
Black helicopters. Aren't those usually associated with, secret government stuff?
That's exactly it. And then you have this weird visit that Doi Hearn's daughter, Sunny, got from these 3 men.
3 men. What were they doing?
They said they were from Fort Hood.
Fort Hood. That's a big military base, right?
That's right, a major one. These men were asking Sunny about black aircraft, and they seemed very interested in the blobs.
That's starting to sound like a scene from a spy movie. Did Sunny know if they were really from Fort Hood?
Well, she was smart enough to get their license plate.
So, right.
Turns out it was registered to a vehicle at Fort Hood.
Wow, okay. That's pretty suspicious.
It is. And there's one more thing.
What's that?
Remember those blob samples that the scientist Mike McDowell was analyzing?
Yeah.
They vanished, just disappeared from his lab.
Wait, what? Seriously?
His receptionist said that these men in black suits showed up and took them. The whole thing was very hush-hush.
Okay, so we have black helicopters, men claiming to be from a military base, mysterious men in suits taking evidence. Why all the secrecy if this was just some weird weather event?
It's a great question, and that's why the biological weapons theory has become so popular with people who've looked into the Oakville blobs. If there was nothing to hide, why go through all that trouble?
It does make you wonder if someone's trying to keep the truth about what really happened quiet. It really does. Makes you think about what else might be out there, huh? But it's important to remember, we're dealing with a lot of speculation here. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, you're right. We should be careful about jumping to conclusions, but the evidence, at least what we know of it, is pretty strange. Before we dive into conspiracies, weren't there some other theories about the Oakville blobs?
Oh, absolutely. We've got to look at everything, right? One idea was that it was all because of an agricultural experiment.
Right, something about pesticides. Could you explain that one a little more?
So the theory goes that maybe they were testing a new pesticide in the area and something went wrong. Maybe it got spread around in this weird gooey form.
I see. Pesticides can drift sometimes, right? But is there anything that connects that to the blobs in Oakville?
Not really. No evidence that points to anything specific. So it's just a theory, a possibility, really.
So kind of a dead end. But I guess it's worth considering, especially since Oakville is surrounded by farmland. And then there's that star jelly theory. First of all, what is star jelly? It's this gelatinous stuff that people sometimes find on the ground after it rains. Nobody's really sure what it is. Some say it's frog eggs, others say it's mold, some even say it's leftover stuff from meteor showers.
So it's natural, but kind of a mystery. But could that explain the Oakville blobs?
There's one big difference. Star jelly is found on the ground. The Oakville blobs were seen falling from the sky during rainstorms.
That is a big difference. Plus, there was a lot of it in Oakville. Much more than you usually see with star jelly.
Exactly. It doesn't really fit what we know about star jelly.
So we've looked at airplane waste, jellyfish, pesticides, and star jelly. None of them seem to explain everything.
Hmm.
That brings us back to the biological weapons idea. Why does this theory seem more likely than the others?
Well, a couple of things. First, there's the timing. Remember, people saw black helicopters around the time the blob started falling.
Right, and then those men from Fort Hood.
Asking about black aircraft, interested in the blobs, it's all a little too suspicious.
Oh, and we can't forget about those samples disappearing from Mike McDowell's lab.
Poof. Just gone. Definitely feels like a cover-up.
Let's talk more about Mike McDowell. He had a theory about the blobs, right?
Yeah, from what he could analyze, he thought they might be some kind of biological agent designed to carry other substances. He said their structure was like an envelope.
An envelope? That sounds kind of scary. What did he mean by that?
He was saying the blobs themselves might not be the problem, but maybe they were meant to deliver something else, something dangerous, like a tiny Trojan horse getting past defenses and then releasing something bad.
That's a creepy thought. But testing biological weapons in a town where people live, that's incredibly risky. Not to mention illegal.
You're absolutely right. It doesn't make sense, which is what makes this whole thing so puzzling. If it was some kind of secret experiment, why Oakville?
Yeah, why there? It doesn't seem logical or even ethical.
But remember, we're talking about stuff that's supposed to be secret. Sometimes those things don't make sense to the rest of us.
And we don't have all the information, right? Maybe there's something we're missing, something that explains why they would choose Oakville.
It's possible. It's like we're detectives trying to solve a case with only half the clues.
And sometimes the most confusing mysteries are the ones without easy answers.
It's true. It's the allure of the unknown. Makes us question everything, think outside the box, consider possibilities that seem crazy at first.
Okay, so we've gone over the main theories about the Oakville blobs, looked at the evidence or the lack of it, talked about what supports each theory and what doesn't. What's the bottom line? What do we make of this weird, creepy event?
I think the biggest thing to take away is that the Oakville blobs, whatever they were, show us there are still mysteries in the world. Things we don't easily understand, things that make us question what we know about science and nature.
It makes you feel small in a way, doesn't it? Knowing that even with all our knowledge, we still don't have all the answers.
Absolutely. And that's not a bad thing. It's exciting. Not knowing everything means there's more to explore, more to discover. There might be things out there we haven't even imagined yet.
Okay, so for our listeners, why should they care about some weird goo that fell from the sky almost 30 years ago in a town they've probably never heard of?
Because the Oakville blobs, mundane or extraordinary, tap into something we all have. Curiosity about the unknown. They remind us that there are still mysteries out there, things that don't fit neatly into categories. And sometimes searching for the truth leads us down some really strange and interesting paths.
Yeah, it really makes you think. We've gone over all the theories, we've looked at the evidence, but it still feels like something's missing. What gets me is how the Oakville blobs challenge what we think is possible. Like, we have to consider these crazy explanations because nothing else makes sense.
Right. That's what I love about these deep dives. It's about opening our minds to things we wouldn't normally think about. And sometimes the most interesting mysteries are the ones we can't easily solve.
So as we wrap up our look at the Oakville blobs, is there anything you want to leave our listeners with? A question, a thought, anything?
Hmm. I think the biggest question, the one that sticks with me about the Oakville blobs, is this: how much do we really understand? Are we willing to look at all the possibilities, even the ones that challenge everything we thought we knew?
That's a deep question. It makes you realize that learning is never over. There's always something new to discover.
Exactly. The Oakville blobs, this weird mix of something normal and something totally bizarre, reminds us that the world is full of surprises, things we might not fully grasp, even with all our science and technology.
So for our listeners who are now hooked on this Oakville blobs mystery, what should they do? Where can they find out more?
Well, the internet is a great place to start, but you gotta be careful. There's a lot of stuff out there, and not all of it's true. Stick to reliable sources, look for evidence, and be careful of those stories that are just trying to get attention with crazy ideas.
Good advice. And hey, don't forget about libraries. You might find an old news article or a scientific report that nobody's talked about in years. You never know.
And remember, this is a mystery that loves to be shared. Talk about it with your friends, your family, other people who love podcasts. Sometimes the best ideas come from talking things out, looking at them from different angles.
I agree. So to everyone listening, stay curious, keep an open mind, and never stop exploring the world's mysteries. Who knows what other strange and amazing things are out there just waiting to be found?
On that note, we'll leave you to think about the possibilities. Until next time, keep on deep diving.